Hi guys, good morning. I just wanted to make some points this morning. I seem to have found myself on YouTube a little more recently. I find it's a very good medium for helping to explain myself really, and obviously promote the Philippines and my love of the Philippines and the Filipino people. You know, sometimes when I post on Facebook, I get a lot of bashing, a lot of people swearing, and there's no way of moderating that. Whereas here at YouTube, there's this fantastic facility called the YouTube Studio, and you can see if a message is offensive or is a spam, and you can delete it from your account, if you like, which I think is a good thing. So I would ask that people would keep messages respectful, because this is a place where we can share, but also we can help to promote the country. I wanted to tackle an issue that I've tackled on Facebook before, in terms of a photo that I published on June the 3rd, explaining that the Philippines was not a third world country. This has come about because I often see Filipinos themselves saying we live in a third world country, we're from a third world country, we're from a poor country, there's lots of poverty, it's third world, or whatever this terminology they are using may state. Now the thing is, I believe, and I hope you would agree, that the only way we can improve things in the Philippines is by lifting up the country, by lifting up the Philippines, and by encouraging foreign investment, by encouraging more tourism, more business to the country. And hopefully by speaking positively about the Philippines, we can encourage more foreigners to invest in the Philippines. So, the terminology third world is very dated. This was terminology that was used in the Cold War era, and it's out of date. So third, to me, first world, second world, third world, to me it looks as though it's some kind of race, and that the first world countries are somehow in the first place of this race. And of course, a third world country would therefore be in third place. Well, I have to say, and I have said this before on Facebook, the Philippines is not in third place. The Filipino people are not in third place. They are doing very well. They are winning the race. Yes, I admit that there is poverty. Yes, I admit there are difficulties, particularly during the pandemic. However, if you have Filipinos themselves referring to their own country as being third world, how do you think that makes people feel, and how do you think that would encourage investors to visit the Philippines? I accept the fact that the Philippines is a developing country, so whereas before you would have said third world, you would now say the Philippines is a developing country. And I accept that. You know, there have been many years of neglect, of underinvestment, of lack of building, and, you know, lack of housing and everything else, and lack of infrastructure. However, over the last few years particularly, there has been a massive drive to improve the Philippines. There has been the build program of the current administration, which is making up for the shortfall. There's massive investment in Mindanao, in areas that were neglected in the past. And of course, this is not meant to be a political video. I am just stating the facts that right now there is a infrastructure project going on. You only have to look a few days ago at the white sand of Manila Bay. The Philippines is being spruced up. The Philippines is being improved. So how can you say that the Philippines is third world when in fact there are improvements, where in fact the Philippines is going in the right direction? Had it not been for this pandemic, a lot more still would have been achieved. So this was just a really short video just to kind of encourage Filipinos and encourage Westerners who are speaking about the Philippines not to use the terminology third world. That's very dated, you know, that's no longer relevant. You know, the Philippines is doing well. You know, in terms of Asia, the Philippines was doing well. The Philippines was the rising tiger of Asia before the pandemic. And you only have to look at the year-on-year growth of the Philippine economy. It was rising. A lot of this, of course, is thanks to the OFWs. I believe the overseas remittance sent by OFWs contributes greatly to the GDP, and I believe this is around 6% per year. It was often said before that even in the global recession and the global crash, the Philippines was one of the only countries, I think there were 3 countries who are unaffected in certain ways by this, and that was because of people sending more money home. Yes, this meant that Filipinos had to send more money home, and it was definitely a strain on them, but it's actually kept the economy afloat. So even now, right now, people are sending more money home to their families. So of course the Philippines is suffering, but thankfully, thank you to the 11 million OFWs around the world sending money back home, the Philippines is still going in the right direction. So again, this is just a word of caution really to our Filipinos who maybe even want to speak down about the country or want to say they're from a third world country or diss the country in some way. You know, I'm a foreigner, I'm not Filipino, but I will proudly stand here sit here wearing my Filipino jacket, you know, promoting the Philippines. And this is what this is about. And I wanted to cover one other thing as well. Somebody put a message on my Facebook yesterday to say I was somehow Pinoy baiting. And this was the reason why I was on YouTube. No, this is not the reason. The reason why I've switched to YouTube is simple. When I was on Facebook, I was publishing a lot of posts, a lot of messages, and some people have got my permission, some people haven't got my permission. But what was happening was people were grabbing my videos off Facebook and putting them onto YouTube, and obviously claiming that obviously this was then getting hits for them for their own personal channel. And you know, the fact is that I want to be able to use my channel to be